This is Paul Glumaz with the movement of Lyndon LaRouche on the day of August 14th, 2018. We are 80-some days away from the midterm elections. Nevertheless, as usual, this is being brought to you by General Welfare Presents. Now, the congressional midterm elections, which I believe are going to fall on Tuesday, the 6th of November, are probably the most significant historical moment in probably this century. And typically, a midterm election is not as significant. But this one is absolutely significant. And this midterm election could decide whether there will be ultimately a nuclear war, which wipes out the human race, or a process of peace and economic development, and the beginning of ending all these wars, these geopolitical situations of permanent wars. But more importantly, the human race has a future. Now, this is going to be hard for a lot of people to get. I am not a Republican. I've been a Democrat all my life, along with being in the LaRouche movement. But if you vote for a Democrat in this coming period, you are voting for the extermination and annihilation of the human race. This is how bad it is. Okay? It doesn't matter whether it's a Bernie Sanders Democrat or a Nancy Pelosi Democrat, or it doesn't matter. And if the Democrats are able to secure control of the House of Representatives, the impeachment of Donald Trump will occur. Or if not, the inability of Donald Trump to control the situation, or to be able to have an ability to determine the direction of the United States, will most likely lead to the extinction of the human race. That's how serious this is. Now, why do I say that? And this is very important for people to understand. For many hundreds of years, especially centered in Europe, there is an aristocracy of sorts. Some people call them an oligarchy. You don't hear about them. You don't see them. But they have habits, and they have an identity. And they have this identity which has been passed on from generation to generation. And their enemy is the human race. Not if they're slaves, not if they're poor, not if they're peons, not if they're peasants, not if they're backward and stupid and uneducated, or not if they're insane or psychotic, but if they become not only too numerous, but also become possessed with the idea of scientific and technological progress. And that is what China is doing. China is leapfrogging ahead. In the next decade, China will become the technological, scientific superpower as they proceed with the Belt and Road, economic development, as they proceed, what have you. The U.S. can be part of that, but the U.S. does not have the capabilities or any place has the capabilities to match what China is going to be. Now you have to understand, to a European oligarchy, it means they have to change their habits. They have to change their inner sense of self. And when I say this, what do I mean by that? I mean, they have to accept that the world's going to go through a process of continuous development. The humanity is going to go into space. The humanity is going to develop scientific capabilities to cure disease, most diseases. That humanity is going to undergo a transformation from a very brutish condition to one of culture and civilization. This is something that cannot be allowed to occur. And I take you to the tragedy of Shakespeare. One of his tragedies is called Hamlet. And you're in a kingdom called Denmark. And Hamlet is a swashbuckling macho of a certain type. And he's confronted with a situation where he needs to become the king, and he needs to set things right, and he needs to mobilize his country because he's facing an invasion from Norway. But that means changing his habits. That means changing his accepted sense of himself. And in the famous soliloquy, what Hamlet is saying is to be this or not to be this. To wage a war against a sea of troubles or not to do so. Not to do so means certain death. To do so means changing one's self, changing one's sense of self, changing one's habits and sense of self. And then he says, well, what's so bad about death? No one's ever come back from it. And what's he doing? He is choosing to be who he is, knowing that by doing so he will die, than to change. Now, with an oligarchy, it's much worse than with Hamlet. With an oligarchy, having to change is worse than death. Maybe not all of the oligarchy, but a significant amount of the oligarchy. Majority of the oligarchy. Majority of the aristocracy. And rather than change or accept the changes which will ultimately cause a change, it will ultimately mean that their children and grandchildren will become normal people. It would be better to die. It would be better to wipe the entire human race out in a nuclear war than to undergo that change. And this is why this election is so serious. It is this oligarchy, in large part, particularly the British aspect of it, which is determined to remove Trump. And if not remove Trump, assassinate Trump. And if not remove or assassinate Trump, cripple him. Because it's only the United States at this point which has the military capacity to wipe out the human race. And if you're going to vote for a Democrat, you're voting to wipe out the human species. Do any of these Democrats understand that? No, I doubt it. But that's what your vote is for. Do I like Republicans? No. But if the Republicans maintain control of the House, then the continuation of the battle between the deep state, between the Justice Department and Trump will continue with perhaps good effects. And Trump will be freed enough to be made to agree to a different world than war, to agree to the economic development that's coming into the world, to go along with that. Those are the stakes right now in this election. And if you don't have a sense of this, then it's going to be very hard. Because it's not a question whether you like Trump or not. It's a question of whether... Now, what happened to the Democratic Party? My party. What happened to it? Well, a number of things happened to it. It got corrupt. It sold out the American people. It went along with the program. It got penetrated. You ended up with a duopoly where really was no fundamental difference in policy between two parties. And of course, that's what caused a major crisis in the Republican Party that led to it breaking up into many factions. But the Democratic Party, on the other hand, went through a period under Obama where Obama actually assassinated key figures in the Democratic Party and made it known to key people who were opposing him that they would be assassinated if they continued to oppose him. And people got scared. The congressmen got scared. Senators got scared. And the person in charge of the drone program, which was the assassination program, is the person that Rudy Giuliani yesterday is saying was the actual coordinator of the whole Russia, FISA, the whole thing. Former CIA Director John Brennan. And what did John Brennan do before he was the head of the CIA? He was running the assassination program for Obama through a separate command. And these are the people that did the droning, but they were also the people who were targeting individuals in the U.S. who were opposing Obama for assassination, and then were using that to terrorize the Democratic Party. And when you are terrorized like that and you go along out of fear or out of corruption, you lose your soul. What you have in the Democratic Party is a collection of lost souls. They've lost their soul. They have no soul. The Democratic National Committee has put forward one issue. There is no other issue in this election: the impeachment of Donald Trump. If you were to go out and take a poll, you would find that that's not considered to be the #1 issue for most people. Jobs, the drug addiction, the drug plague, and the need for infrastructure and so forth. Those are significantly higher issues on the scale of what's important to people. But all of that means nothing. The only thing that the leadership of the Democratic Party is putting forward now in their campaign in the next, associated with their candidates, going across the board, is the necessity to impeach Donald Trump. For what? For being a Russian spy, or being a Russian agent, for being this. And I remember earlier, not long after Trump was elected, a exchange between Tucker Carlson and James Carville. Now, James Carville is somebody who actually knows us. He worked closely with us in a certain period of time. We were allies with him. He represented the part of the Democratic Party that was opposing NAFTA, that was opposing the corporations, that was opposing, that was actually trying to represent, and he was helping people run for office on that kind of perspective. He was also an advisor to Bill and to Hillary. His wife, on the other hand, ran the Bush campaign. He ran the '92 Obama campaign, Clinton campaign. If anyone knows the truth about the elections, it is James Carville. He has one of the most sophisticated polling operations. He was on TV doing the entire Russia is what was the reason the elections determined the election. Russia, a country with 150 million people that Obama accused of being nothing but a gas station, of no significance, of being nothing but a gas station, had the power to override the billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars spent on Hillary's campaign. They indicted people for allegedly $100 of internet ads. I mean, this is so out there. But when you have somebody who knows the truth, which is that Hillary lost the campaign because she couldn't connect with the population with the policies that she represented, which was war, an end to carbon. She went to Pennsylvania saying that we're going to shut down all the coal mines, right? So you're not going to win Pennsylvania. I mean, she went to Pennsylvania and West Virginia saying we're going to shut down all the coal mines. Well, you're not going to. That doesn't appeal to them very much. So Trump won in those areas. But no, it's Russia, 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 Russia. Impeach, 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 impeach. And the so-called new candidates, the Bernie Sanders, millennial wonderkin, like this woman Ocasio-Cortez, they don't even have. They're not even in the. They don't even know where they are. They're like not even there. I mean, they're like. They're like. Oh yeah, we're for the single payer. We're for this. We're for that. But they're not. They don't count. They're not. Therefore, also shutting down all the oil, all the coal. And everything else. They're like not in the real world. They're in a populist fantasy world. So a lot of people are saying, well, they represent the new face of the Democratic Party. Well, you better, if they do, you're not going to go anywhere. And then the Republicans. God help us with the Republicans. But the trade unions are not staying in the Democratic Party. The AFL-CIO leadership is indicating that they will make a qualified move out of the Democratic Party into the Republican Party because they agree with Trump on NAFTA. They agree with Trump on jobs. They agree with Trump on union wages. They agree with Trump on all of this. So, but that's not that is good, but it's not the fundamental issue. The fundamental issue is the annihilation of the human race, because if you cannot use the military power of the United States to rain terror upon the offending human race which is being led by China at this point, but could in the future be easily led by as well the United States and other nations. The offending human race is the race that wants development, that wants to improve the condition, that wants to eliminate poverty. That's the offending human race. And they have to be wiped out. It is better for all the oligarchs of the world, as far as they're concerned, to be wiped out with the entire extinction of the human race. Now, at some time, they entertained the ability of winning a nuclear war against Russia and China. But as things go, science and technology and the commitment of China and Russia to survive has generated weapons capabilities which make it impossible to win a nuclear war. So if a nuclear war happens now, those launching that nuclear war from the United States are doing so with the intention of wiping out the human race. And they need a soulless Democratic Party with a bunch of radical Bernie Sanders people going along with the soulless Democratic Party to be taking over the Congress to carry this out. That's what this is about. Okay? So the stakes are very high. And the stakes are not about what people think they are. And, you know, Trump made significant a significant process in Korea. There are significant developments all over the world pointing to a potential outbreak of peace. Now we come to the economic aspect of this. Another factor in all of this is that the oligarchy had anticipated that the collapse would be used to wipe out everybody, and then you would have a new feudalism or something new coming on. But that's not going to happen. And what you have after the BRIC summit in Johannesburg, South Africa last month is the realization that a new monetary system, a new financial architecture is going to be needed to replace the current euro, dope, London oil dollar, which works to the disadvantage of everybody. Because the United States is not exporting, the United States is merely importing in exchange for the right for the international financial system to use their dollar. And the threats, the sanctions on Russia, the sanctions on Turkey, the sanctions and all of the attacks on these countries which are now going on. The ruble is being destroyed by currency speculation, so is the Turkish lira. All of this ultimately forces these countries to adopt exchange controls and to begin trading with each other in their own currencies, that is currency swaps. But that's not efficient, because you're stuck with one country trading with another country. It doesn't really work. You got to be able to have all the countries be able to trade with each other in a multilateral way, and to do that you need a new financial architecture, a fixed exchange system. And this is so we're exactly at the point now in this financial crisis where what Lyndon LaRouche laid out in the 90s, which is a new Bretton Woods, a new fixed exchange system, a new financial architecture, which even Bill Clinton was open to in '98. We are at that point where these countries are going to have no choice but to go in that direction, and also the United States has to go in that direction if it wants to survive. So we're in that situation because the dollar-based system doesn't work. London and what's happening, and it's not clear whether the system is now collapsing and they're now attacking the weaker parts of the system like Brazil, Argentina, Indonesia, Turkey, Southern Europe, to prop up the more stronger part of the system, which is Germany, France, Great Britain, and the United States. It's not clear. But when you collapse these currencies the way you do, you also threaten the corporate debt that's tied to those areas of the world and to those currencies. And we're looking at a corporate debt bubble of $75 trillion, with half of it being junk bond grade or a little bit better. So we're looking at this financial crisis. And you can do all of the tariffs you want or not, but ultimately you're going to need a new financial architecture. And this is becoming understood. And LaRouche's new financial architecture is the one that's going to have to be adopted. Now, is that possible? Yes. The LaRouche's ideas and policies have penetrated deeply into the networks around Donald Trump. One in particular, Roger Stone, spoke by Skype at our European conference last month, and said that he became familiar with LaRouche's ideas in 1980 during the presidential campaign, and he thought Lyndon LaRouche was, as he's put it, nuts. Now he says that he now understands what LaRouche has been saying. So we have penetrated those circles, so there is some understanding of this. So all of this has to lead in this direction. And however, a Democratic Congress coming in 2019 will be the most frightening and dangerous moment for humanity. We are in actually the most frightening and dangerous moment for humanity. You can see it in the way they're going after all of the blogs, all of the YouTube sites of people like Alex Jones and others. They're freaked out. The CIA spawned all these things, Apple, Facebook, YouTube, and so forth, Twitter. They're very freaked out. This crowd is very freaked out.